Mali figurines are mysterious artifacts that are anthropomorphic sculptures carved from soapstone, limestone, or granite, often with disproportionately large heads and pronounced facial features. These objects are usually small in size, from a few centimeters to half a meter in height, and come from what is now Sierra Leone and Liberia, countries in West Africa. Their exact origin, age, and the culture that created these figurines are still a subject of debate among archaeologists, historians, and ethnographers. Some researchers suggest that the figurines may be associated with a vanished civilization, traces of which have been lost in the jungle and sands of time. White travelers and colonizers began to encounter these artifacts from the 10th century, and even then locals treated them with respect, claiming that they belonged to the Danias people, mythical ancestors who possess great wisdom and power. Normally are most often associated with the Mandi, or Mandi people, one of the largest ethnic groups in the region, who still use these figurines for ritual purposes today. The Mandi have an ancient tradition of placing them on the coffin of the deceased, as a talisman and a mediator between the worlds. According to local beliefs, such figurines can protect the soul of the deceased in the afterlife and ensure their rebirth in a good guise. Neighboring ethnic groups, such as the Kissi, place normally near their homes and fields, believing that these figures bring good luck, ward off illness and evil spirits, and promote the fertility of the land. In their practice, the figurines are often decorated with natural dyes and sometimes fumigated with smoke from special herbs to activate their powers. There is also a legend that the oldest figurines were accidentally found by workers in diamond mines. Some of these finds, according to unconfirmed reports, date back a whopping 17,000 years, although more realistic and scientifically recognized dating ranges from 500 to 2,500 years. The figurines in Mali are truly amazing in their diversity and mysticism. Most often, they depict humanoid creatures with hypertrophied facial features, wide noses, thick lips, massive cheekbones, and bulging eyes. Many of them are squatting or in characteristic poses, as if waiting for something, or in a state of meditation. However, some figurines stand out from this series. Among them are images of creatures with scaly skin, toothy mouths reminiscent of animals or snakes, but with arms and legs shaped like a human. These hybrid figures have no unambiguous interpretation, even among specialists, of course. Such images have attracted the attention of ufologists and supporters of alternative history, who believe that Mali may depict reptilians, mythical extraterrestrial creatures that allegedly influence ancient civilizations. They argue that such figures have too many non-human features and also mention the legend of local tribes about creatures that descended from the sky and possessed incredible strength and knowledge. However, traditional science is not yet ready to accept such hypotheses. Scientists have not yet come to a consensus on who or what these figurines depict. Some suggest that they could have been cult objects used in rituals associated with fertility, hunting, weather, or even ancestor worship. Another point of view suggests that these are images of real or mythical creatures preserved in the oral tradition of the peoples of West Africa. There is also a more philosophical interpretation, based on ancient West African myths, according to which God once became angry with heavenly beings, angels and non-beasts, and brought them to earth in the form of people. These fallen angels, according to legend, lost their divine powers but retained their wisdom. According to this theory, the Mali figurines depict these very beings, once celestial but now condemned to earthly existence. This explanation not only imbues the figurines with a mystical aura, but also adds a deep philosophical meaning to them, suggesting that man is not just a creature of flesh, but a bearer of something higher, perhaps punished or having forgotten his essence. If we accept that some of the figurines do indeed date back tens of thousands of years, as proponents of alternative theories claim, this seriously undermines the established academic view that advanced forms of civilization penetrated West Africa only after the arrival of the Portuguese in the 15th century. Such a find could rewrite world history, forcing scientists to reconsider their attitude to African antiquities and the role of Africa in the development of human civilization. The so-called celestial stones, with which the figurines are often found, add additional mystery to the figurines. These rare stone pieces are indeed covered with a blue glaze, although no known natural or artificial processes in this region explain them. According to local legend, these so-called heavenly stones are literally petrified pieces of the sky that once fell from a height, breaking into many small and large fragments. Local residents believe that these are not just stones, but fragments of the firmament that possess magical powers and spiritual energy. Many shamans and guardians of tradition still use them in rituals, pass them on by inheritance, and keep them in sacred places, guarding them as a priceless treasure. However, official science to this day does not recognize the existence of these stones as a separate mineralogical phenomenon. Their extremely rare finds, as well as the lack of systematic study, make this issue very vague. There is a highly controversial statement that, in the mid-20th century, the Institute of Gemstones at the Museum of Natural History, some sources mention the Smithsonian Institute allegedly conducted a spectral and chemical analysis of one of the celestial stones. The results, if these reports are to be believed, were shocking. The stone consisted of 77% oxygen, 20% carbon, as well as silicon and traces of iridium. This composition in itself already looks anomalous, because there are no known natural minerals on Earth with such a high oxygen content. Even more mysterious was the presence of iridium, a metal that is extremely rare in the Earth's crust and is most often found in meteorites or formed during planetary scale collisions. This gave rise to theories that these stones could have an extraterrestrial, perhaps even artificial origin. However, it is worth emphasizing that the reliability of these studies is highly questionable. Not a single official scientific journal has published the results, and according to the official version, such stones are not listed in the museum's archives. Nevertheless, interest in celestial stones does not wane, and their mystery remains unsolved. Perhaps, future research will still shed light on their origin, whether it is a rare geological phenomenon, the remains of an ancient civilization, or indeed fragments of something that fell from the sky. Now let's move to another corner of the planet, to the Japanese islands, where mysterious ancient artifacts, the Dogu figurines, also exist. They were first learned about in Russia in the mid-20th century, when the famous Soviet science fiction writer Alexander Kazantsev devoted a separate chapter to these figurines in his books. Kazantsev, being fascinated by hypotheses about visits by aliens in ancient times, cited the Dogu figurines as one of the visual proofs of the existence of between humanity and extraterrestrial civilizations. He especially actively linked them with another phenomenon, the famous Tunguska catastrophe of 1908, suggesting that an alien spacecraft crashed over Siberia at that time. Moreover, Alexander Kazantsev, one of the most prominent popularizers of the version about the extraterrestrial origin of Dogu, was able to collect his own collection of figurines, some of which he received from Japanese colleagues and others he acquired during visits to Japan. In total, archaeologists have found about 15,000 Dogu figurines to date. Moreover, their geography covers almost the entire territory of the Japanese archipelago. The height of the figurines varies from 8 to 30, and their age, determined by radiocarbon analysis, ranges from 3,000 to 4,500 years. Despite the external similarity, each figurine is unique among them. There are indeed images of animals, but in the overwhelming majority of cases, these are strange anthropomorphic creatures whose body proportions are distorted to shorter, conversely elongated limbs, large hips, disproportionately small torsos. The faces of the figurines are devoid of the usual anatomy. Instead of normal eyes, there are often huge oval or Mendoza slits. The head has the shape of a heart, a triangle, or even resembles a capsule. The entire body is covered with many geometric patterns, circles, spirals, zigzags, which archaeologists interpret as either stylized tattoos or part of a special costume. But there is one particularly curious detail. The vast majority of dogus are missing their right arm. Scientists traditionally explain this by destruction. Over time, however, the fact of the mass absence of the right arm gives rise to more mystical or alternative theories, from symbolic sacrifices to alien prostheses. The most popular version among ufologists and supporters of the field contact theory is that dogus depicted creatures of extraterrestrial origin, aliens who visited Earth in ancient times and left their mark on the culture of the Jomon people. And this hypothesis has details that have puzzled even NASA specialists. In 1964 and then in the 1990s, a group of scientists from the agency conducted a study in which they tried to make a visual and functional comparison of the dogu suit with modern astronaut spacesuits. The results were unexpectedly positive. The spacesuit-like appearance of the dogu figurines really did resemble the protective gear of astronauts. Rounded and voluminous sleeves, wide pants, a helmet with thick goggles, hermetic connections, even bulges and valves on the torso that could correspond to breathing, cooling, and pressure regulation systems. Moreover, NASA specialists claimed that the dogu clothing displays elements that simply could not have been known to the ancient Japanese at the time these figurines were created. These include oxygen filters, ventilation hatches, and even fasteners reminiscent of modern zippers. And the most striking thing is the pronounced slit structure on the eyes of the figurines, similar to special glasses for protection from bright light or radiation. Most dogu figurines, especially in the cheek area and near the mouth, have three mysterious protrusions that are clearly visible, rounded, convex, as if inserted into a mask. They are difficult to compare with any elements of human anatomy, which baffles researchers who adhere to traditional views. However, if we consider dogu as an image of creatures in spacesuits, everything becomes much more logical. Similar sockets on the helmet could serve as connection points for breathing hoses, communication cables, or ventilation systems. British expert on ancient Japanese culture, Walton Green, devoted a decade to studying dogu figurines and eventually published a book called Spacesuits that are 6,000 years old. In his work, he conducts a detailed comparative analysis, pointing out numerous design elements of dogu that resemble elements of modern or even futuristic spacesuits. Green's important observation is that during the Jomon period, the Japanese also made many other clay figures and objects with clearly human features: women, men, children. That is, people of this era were able to depict realistic people. This was not the limit of their skill, but a conscious artistic choice. However, the dogu looked completely different. Their heads are disproportionate, their bodies are exaggerated, and their faces are covered with something that looks more like a mask or helmet than a face. The meaning of other artifacts from the Jomon period is quite clear. Household utensils, dishes, objects used in everyday life, hunting and fishing, but the dogu do not fit into the framework of utilitarian functions. They seem to exist outside the context of everyday life, as if created to remember and convey something very unusual. Green also examines Japanese mythology and finds numerous references to heavenly suns, flying chariots, fire dragons, heavenly gates descending from the sky, and other objects whose behavior can be compared to modern tales of Inlo. For example, chronicles from 1361 mention a huge flying object shaped like a drum which appeared from the direction of one of the western islands. In May of the year 6, a fireball hovered over Kyoto, causing fear and awe among the witnesses. A particular note is the case when dozens of samurai observed a red, rotating wheel stop in the sky above Nijo Castle. Their accounts were reported in chronicles with the utmost seriousness. Modern Japanese also regularly report sightings of strange objects in the sky. UFO organizations in Japan record dozens of reports each year, and some videos cause heated debates outside the country. All of this, from ancient legends to modern sightings, forces us to rethink the question: who are these mysterious dogu figures? Is this just a bizarre mythology of the past, a figment of the imagination of ancient people, Or is there something more behind these ceramic artifacts? A memory of contact with extraterrestrial intelligence forever fixed in clay. The Dogu figurines continue to keep their secret. Their unusual appearance, details reminiscent of elements of technology, myths intertwined with ancient observations. All this haunts both academic researchers and enthusiasts of alternative history. And perhaps the answers are hidden not in the past, but in the future when science, archaeology, and technology come together to encrypt messages left to us by civilizations that we are only just beginning to guess about.